The fusion just started. Let's take a look at Emic Trunkheart, whether you should fuse him or not, and why I'm a little bit on the fence on this guy. Welcome, I'm the Deadwoodjedi. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today we are on the test server taking a look at Emic Trunkheart, and we're going to examine the idea of whether you should fuse him or not. And specifically, we're going to be looking at him for Clan Boss. Now, I feel like, first off, 100%, I do feel like you should fuse this champion. As always, I always say, if you have the opportunity to get a free Lego, get the free Lego. That's not a question. What it does become a question for are for those of you that play casually, that don't save up your resources, don't spend money on this game, and or at least not enough to make up for the lack of time you put into it. Occasionally, when these fusions come around, you're going to grind it out to make sure you get this fusion, and it's a bit of a grind because they're not easy to do. This one's no exception. So the question becomes, is this something that you really want to do? Do you really want to pursue it to the point of getting it? And for those of you that are a little bit on the fence, that's what I want to examine today. Talk about what my experience is playing with them on the test server, trying out different clan boss teams with them, and hopefully give you a better idea of whether this is somebody you want to fuse or not. But as always, if you have the opportunity to get a free legendary, you do it. If you spend money on this game, if you put in the time, if you have the resources available, I don't see any reasons why you wouldn't want to get this champion. He brings unkillable, which literally a handful of champions actually bring as an AoE skill. So at the very worst, this champion is as good, if not clearly better, than Sir Nicholas. At his best, though, he could be a real game changer for you in this game. And I want to kind of examine that because right now, when I've been playing with him, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Now, I don't want to spend too much time going over his kit, but there's a couple things we want to talk about. First off, we all know his A1 got reduced, right? So that the value of the shields he buffs up can't exceed more than 10,000 HP. That's still a solid amount. I do feel like it's a little bit on the low side, right? It's a very special case that you can actually bump something up that much. I'd love to see this be a little bit closer to 20k or 30k, so he still has some viability in an Infinity style shield building type of team. Even if it's not as good as a Brogni or, super OP. I feel like that would give him a little bit more versatility. But because of that reduction, I don't think he's going to have any major Infinity ramifications for Clan Boss. I've tried some teams with him. They're not super great. He does have, I think the most interesting thing about his kit is his A2. And it, one, places an AoE shield, which is a sizable shield. 30% of his HP is actually a sizable shield. But it also decreases the cooldown of all ally skills by 1 turn. What's unique about this is on a 3-turn cooldown. The only other champion that has a skill that's really very much like this is Painkeeper, right? We have Renegade that does it by 2-turn reduction. We have Kymar, who does a full reduction. Yumiko that does a 3-turn reduction. Well, Emic Trunkheart does a 1-turn reduction, just like Painkeeper. The big difference is this is on a 3-turn cooldown, while Painkeeper is on a 4-turn cooldown. Now, normally that would be game changing in and of itself, but the problem is his A3 ability here, the one that gives him unkillable, which is a great skill, gives him a taunt, which is fine, and gives himself a shield buff. All that stuff is great. But this is on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, right? So you have a 4-turn cooldown and a 3-turn cooldown. If you play the game and you're familiar with it, you know that anytime somebody has a 4-turn cooldown ability and a 3-turn cooldown ability, the 3-turn cooldown ability is going to be gated by the 4-turn one. So if I play a skill that has a 4-turn cooldown, boom, I'm going to play it, right? And then I play the skill in the next turn that has a 3-turn cooldown. Well, look, now they have the same amount of cooldowns. That means they are both going to get off of cooldown at the same time, and that 4-turn cooldown is the one that goes first because it's prioritized, right? So even if you have a 3-turn cooldown ability, it's gated by the longer one. So in effect, that cooldown reduction is still on a 4-turn cooldown. This can be advantageous for us, right? Or I should say it's at least something that we can utilize, but it's not what I would say is ideal. Ideally, they'd both be on 3-turn cooldowns, and then we'd be able to utilize the skills even more. To be honest with you, if that A3 ability with the unkillable was on a 3-turn cooldown and only lasted 1 turn, I'd actually prefer it to what we have right now. As it is, the negatives, and I kind of want to get into this because I feel like they're going to be overlooked, right? The negatives with Trunk Heart is if you want to use his cooldown ability, it's on a 4-turn cooldown like Painkeeper, in which case there's not much difference there, right? If you want to use his unkillable ability, which is fine, it's on a 4-turn cooldown, but he's basically Sir Nicholas. So like I said, that's his floor, is Sir Nicholas. It's a pretty good floor, right? It's a good champion. And you can definitely build unkillable teams around that. But just like with Sir Nicholas, you need another AoE block debuff or unkillable champion to make that work for your entire clan boss team, right? We are speaking specifically about clan boss. If you want to use him in other areas of this game, right? You want to use him for spiders. You want to use him for Doom Tower, right? With like Bommler or Scarab or something. I think he's going to be fantastic for you. Honestly, those are going to be some of the best spots for him, I think, personally. But if we're talking clan boss, the big limitation is that his unkillable ability, he has it, he just doesn't bring anything else to the table, right? The cooldown reduction is not really going to benefit that much. It's still beneficial, but not that much. And because of that, he's kind of limited in how good he is. This is not the kind of champion that you're going to bring in to take you from a 2-key to a 1-key team. He is the type of champion, though, that will get you from a 4-key to a 3-key, a 3-key to a 2-key, because he's going to enable you to build an unkillable team. And that's really the big thing, right? If you can build an unkillable team, it's generally the better way to go, because you can stack damage on all your champions without having to worry about things like surviving. So in that sense, he's a game changer, right? Still a game changer. You get an unkillable champion that can absolutely 100% change your account. But we have to keep in mind those limitations. One of the big ones is he gives everybody a shield. The problem is he has an unkillable, not a block damage skill. So that means he's still going to be taking damage. Your team's still going to be taking damage. So unlike somebody like Helicath, who will block damage up to the stun, so his shield can stack and really help you survive that stun, you're not going to have the same thing happen here with Emic. That means those champions, it's going to be very, very difficult. I'll put it that way, to have stun targeting for the stun in clan boss, right? So that becomes a little bit trickier. He does work extremely well with other unkillable and other block damage champions, though. So every tower team that we have, every Sir Nicholas team that we have, he's going to be as good or better than those champions in those teams, right? If you can bring in a Warcaster or a Demitha or even a Maneater to help finish those teams out. And so that's kind of the flip of him. The cooldown reduction ability is extremely cool, because all of a sudden it's enabling us to be able to use champions that have 4-turn cooldowns or even 5-turn cooldowns in their kits and have those come up more regularly. And if you take away his unkillable ability, if you just say, you know what, I don't care that he's unkillable, we're not even going to worry about that, you can really utilize him as a better version of Painkeeper, one that can cool down everybody's skills on every 3 turns. So all of a sudden, he makes a lot other teams viable. You looking for a 2-1 ratio team and you don't have an Elva or a Lydia, right? Someone that has a speed buff or speed boost ability every 3 turns. Well, guess what? Now you can utilize champions like Lysandra, or you can utilize champions like Siphi, or you can even utilize an epic champion like Frostbringer and make her viable for clan boss, because those 4-turn cooldowns they had will now become 3 turns with cooldown reduction from Emic, but only if you prioritize that ability. And so, like I said, there's a pro and a con to him, right? But I find him to be very interesting, and I am hesitant to say you don't need to do this fusion. I think at a certain point, when you have a clan boss team that's getting you 2-key or better, when you have an unkillable team, even if it's not doing quite that much damage, I don't know that Emic's really going to make a big difference for you. And so I can see there being an eagerness to maybe skip it. But that cooldown ability, that's the one thing that is so unique about this champion. I haven't really been able to even fully dive in and all the possibilities, because honestly, I think there's a lot more out there than the ones I've even thought about. But there are some really good possibilities there, because by reducing cooldowns of everybody to 3 turns, it just opens up so many more champions you can use. And that, I think, is the real gem of this champion. So one of the things I wanted to show you guys is I've been playing around with a bunch of teams, right? I have Emic here with Maneater. Works really nicely. I think that's going to be one of his best usage. I have Emic here with Lysandra and Hope. And Tomb Lord. These are all champions on 4-turn cooldowns. Well, now they're all going to be on 3-turn cooldowns because we have Emic, right? You have him here with Siphi. And Duodan, the 4-turn cooldowns again, being reduced to 3 turns because we're not using his unkillable ability, just the cooldown ability, right? Obviously, that doubled the Mytha team here, right? With Corpulent Cadaver, bringing in a Brogni, maybe he can be like an aid to that. It doesn't work very well. But I have it here. If you guys want to see it, let me know. I'll actually, I'll fully build it out and run it. But I'm a little dicey on it. We have Emic and Sir Nicholas here, right? And you got 2 unkillable champions and a bunch of rares in there. There's a variety of things. One of the ones I'm really excited about is to bring Emic with Painkeeper together. I think that could be really, really cool, as they will each cool each other down. So now everybody's working on a 3-turn cooldown. Everybody, they're just going on a 1-1 ratio. I think that could be really interesting. So you can see there's a bunch of different ways to utilize them to make other teams work. The real issue, and the one thing you have to be cognizant of if you want to fuse this champion and you want to use him for your clan boss team, he's a mediocre damage dealer for clan boss. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's not great, and I built him 4 damage and it's meh, you know what I mean? His shields are good, but they're not on like Valkyrie or Hellcat size shields, so they're not going to be able to keep you alive by themselves. His unkillable ability is good, but he doesn't bring anything else to the table. He doesn't bring a lot else to the table, right? He enables all your 4-turn damage dealers to be able to be used for that. That's cool. But the big thing is, if you're going to use him for the cooldown ability, then he's really not bringing a lot else to the table. He will bring you a shield. That's pretty significant, but that's kind of about it. And so you kind of got to be aware of this, right? There are definitely some limitations to this champion. And part of me thinks that's a good thing, right? Like, these champions are too OP, and we've seen this with some of them that have come out, like Acrisia, like Newt, or the Nut. When they're that strong, it trivializes a lot of the game, and it kind of makes a lot of the content not as interesting, right? So he's really good, right? But there are some limitations, and I do feel like I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't really like the way that they interact necessarily in this kit, but it's not a bad thing in and of itself. So just kind of keeping those things in mind, that's kind of where we're at with this champion. I like him. I think he's a pretty solid champion. And the biggest thing is, I don't know all the ways we're going to want to use him. I don't think nobody thought Maneater was going to be good. Nobody thought, Painkeeper was going to be good until they were. And once they were, all of a sudden it's like, well, how do we live without these champions? So understanding that, I feel like it's a matter of time before we really discover some really interesting things we're able to use Emic for. Till that happens, though, he's gonna be a very good champion, but not. I don't know that he's gonna be necessarily a game changer. If you are really advanced in this game, if you're end level, if you're 1 king clan boss, that sort of thing, I don't know how much Emic's going to be doing for you, right? If you can beat Doom Tower already, I don't know that Emic's going to change anything for you. He'll be an interesting tool to have in your kit, though, with that cooldown thing. I think that's going to be pretty cool, and it might open up some things in the future that you don't want to miss out on, and that might be a reason in and of itself just to get this guy. But I think you got to kind of keep that in mind, right? If you're new in this game, or you're like mid-level, or you're still struggling with a couple different areas, this guy's going to be outstanding for you. You're struggling with Doom Tower, he's going to be outstanding. If you're struggling with Clan Boss, he's going to be outstanding. There's absolutely somebody you want to get. But I don't know that this is what I would call an end game champion. And typically, when I do recommend fusions, I recommend them, heavily recommend them, when they're going to be account changing. And I think there is going to be a portion of you that's going to be the case for. If I got them on my free-to-play, I'd be stoked. But I think for most people, well, I don't know. I don't know where most people are. But for a lot of people, he's not going to be an account-changing champion. But his kit's so different, so unique, with the cooldown ability, with the unkillable buffs. I have a hard time saying you shouldn't fuse him. I think everybody should try to get this champion. And a lot of that has to do with we don't know what comes next. And for whatever comes next, he might be really integral for. Because the one thing he does with that cooldown ability is enable so many of your other champions. And that's hard to get away from. So hopefully that you guys found this, interesting at the very least, helpful, hopefully, a little bit insightful into the ways that you can use this champion, because there are going to be a bunch of them. Definitely there's going to be a bunch of them. And I'll try to cover a bunch, but I think they might get a little stale after a while. Utilizing his cooldown to enable teams is great, but obviously we prefer to utilize an entire kit when we can. I don't know how often we're going to be able to do that, but there's some really cool stuff that you can do with him, right? Especially for those, 2-key, 3-key clan boss teams, pairing him with somebody like Sir Nick or a Warcaster or a Tower to make an unkillable team. It's pretty cool. Or for that matter, pairing him with Maneater, I think is one of the coolest teams that is going to be very viable for people to build. That's going to be very fun. And there's obviously some other options out there. I'm actually really interested to see if I can't replace Painkeeper in the Bat Eater comp with Emic, I should say. And maybe we don't need both Ban Eaters. I don't know how to make that work offhand. I'm not sure, but it's an interesting concept. Yeah. So, I'm really interested to kind of, continue to dive in, continue to work with, and continue to play with him. Now, one other big thing, if you guys are wondering, this guy, he's in the calculator. He's in the calculator right now. So if you guys are looking to build a team, you're looking to, try out some stuff on your own, go ahead, go to my website, deadwoodjedi.com, and you can play with Emic. He's in there. You can come up with some cool teams. So, it's not just me coming up with them. You guys can too. Anyway, guys, that's all we got for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell. And as I've been saying, if there's a team that you're really interested to see him in, let me know. And if I agree with you, I will build it. So that's all we got, guys. And till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.